The harsh sound of the alarm clock jolted Hannah back to reality in her bedroom as sunlight streamed through the window. Opening her eyes, she gazed at her sleeping husband Drake's face beside her. Drake was scheduled to leave for an extended business trip next week. Hannah took a deep breath, preparing herself mentally for the new day. Slipping out of bed, Hannah put on her slippers and stepped into the hallway. There, she paused for a moment, her eyes drawn to Katie's bedroom door. That room, empty for 3 months now, stared back at her unchanged. Despite the ache in her heart, Hannah made her way to the kitchen to prepare breakfast. As the aroma of coffee filled the house, Hannah took eggs from the refrigerator and cracked them into the frying pan. She smiled upon hearing Drake's footsteps descending the stairs. "Good morning, honey," Drake called out softly. "Good morning," Hannah turned to reply. "What's on your schedule today?" "I have a final meeting about the Chicago business trip this afternoon. Should be home in time for dinner." They shared a peaceful conversation over breakfast. However, the family photo on the table silently spoke of Katie's absence. After breakfast, Hannah headed to the elementary school where she worked. In her 3rd grade classroom, she greeted her students with a warm smile. "Good morning, everyone," Hannah called out cheerfully. "Good morning, Mrs. Brown," the children responded energetically. As class began, Hannah wrote math equations on the blackboard, carefully explaining each step. Watching her students' earnest expressions, she reaffirmed her sense of purpose as a teacher. During break time, she also provided individual guidance to students struggling with homework. "Jessica, here's how you think about this problem," Hannah explained gently. "Oh, I understand now. Thank you, teacher." Jessica's eyes lit up. After school, Hannah exchanged brief small talk with her colleagues before heading home. When she arrived, Drake was already there, starting dinner preparations. "I'm home," Hannah called out, and Drake turned with a smile. "Welcome back. I'm making lasagna tonight." They worked together to finish preparing dinner and sat down at the table. Over wine, Drake began explaining the details of his trip. "It'll take about 3 weeks. I'll try to get back as soon as I can." Hannah nodded silently. Then, the inevitable topic arose. "About Katie." Hannah hesitantly began. "Is there any new information?" Drake let out a deep sigh. "No word from the police. But we can't give up." Hannah gripped Drake's hand, tears welling in her eyes. "We'll find her, I know we will." Drake gently embraced Hannah and whispered, "Yes, we'll keep trying together." The next day, Drake began preparing for his trip. While packing clothes into his suitcase, he occasionally glanced at Hannah. She helped him silently, suppressing her loneliness. In the car heading to the airport, Drake held Hannah's hand once again. "Call me immediately if anything happens." Hannah nodded and said, "Take care." After seeing him off and returning home, Hannah let out a deep sigh in the silent house. As night fell, she sat alone on the living room sofa, staring at the television. Suddenly, she heard a strange noise from upstairs. Hannah stiffened, looking up at the ceiling. Just then, the doorbell rang. Hannah nervously opened the door to find her mother-in-law Rebecca standing there. "Good evening, Hannah," Rebecca's voice was cold. "Rebecca, what brings you here so late?" Hannah asked, bewildered. Rebecca walked into the living room and sat on the sofa without a word. "I came to check on you since Drake's away on his trip." Though uncomfortable, Hannah prepared tea. After taking a sip, Rebecca spoke in a stern tone. "Hannah, do not enter the attic under any circumstances. Do you understand?" Hannah's eyes widened in surprise. "What? Why?" "Don't ask questions. Just promise me." Rebecca's eyes were sharp, piercing through Hannah. Hannah nodded reluctantly. Satisfied, Rebecca stood up, saying, "Well, I'll be going now," and left. After the door closed, Hannah looked up at the ceiling again. The attic door seemed to look down at her, as if concealing a secret. In Hannah's heart, anxiety and curiosity began to mingle. When Hannah returned from school, she found her son Ethan playing video games on the living room sofa. This was usually his homework time. Hannah frowned as she called out to him. "Ethan, what about your homework?" Ethan answered without taking his eyes off the screen. "I finished it." Hannah sat next to her son and gently placed a hand on his shoulder. "Did something happen? You seem different." Ethan finally met Hannah's eyes. Anxiety clouded his gaze. "Mom, about Katie." Ethan's voice trailed off. Hannah's heart jumped. "About Katie? Did something happen?" Ethan took a deep breath and continued. "Today at school, I was talking with friends about Katie. And then. Hannah listened with bated breath. "Someone said they saw Katie. But that's impossible, right?" Hannah embraced her son. "Ethan, thank you for worrying about Katie. But it's better not to believe such rumors. The police are working hard to find her." Ethan nodded, but anxiety still lingered in his expression. At dinner, Ethan was quieter than usual. Though concerned about her son's behavior, Hannah avoided pressing him too hard. After the meal, Ethan said, "I'm tired," and retired to his room early. Late at night, Hannah woke to a noise. Looking at the clock, it was past 2 a.m. Stepping into the hallway, she saw Ethan's bedroom door was open. "Ethan?" Hannah called softly, and her son's voice replied from the direction of the stairs. "Mom." His voice was tinged with fear. Hannah hurried down the stairs. In the dim living room, she saw Ethan's small figure. He was looking up at the ceiling, pointing with a trembling finger. "What's wrong?" Hannah placed her hand on her son's shoulder. Ethan answered in a shaking voice. "I hear Katie's voice, from up there." Hannah caught her breath. Rebecca's warning flashed through her mind. "Do not enter the attic." However, seeing her son's anxious expression made Hannah's heart waver. "Can you really hear it?" Hannah asked gently. Ethan nodded desperately. "Yes, it's faint, but I think she's asking for help." Hannah took a deep breath and made her decision. "All right. Mom will go check. Wait here." Ethan looked up at Hannah anxiously. "I want to go too." "No. Please wait here," Hannah said firmly. Hannah nervously placed her hand on the attic ladder. Rebecca's warning echoed in her head, "Do not enter the attic." However, thinking of Katie, she couldn't hesitate any longer. As she climbed the ladder one rung at a time, Hannah's heart was pounding. Her hands trembled, and cold sweat ran down her back. After reaching the final rung and placing her hand on the attic entrance, Hannah took a deep breath. "Katie?" Hannah called out softly. No response. Gathering her courage, Hannah opened the attic door. A dark space spread before her, the dusty air tickling her nose. Moonlight streaming through a small window cast eerie shadows of furniture and boxes. Hannah cautiously took a step forward. The floorboard creaked, making her shudder. She explored the attic slowly, shining her flashlight around. Old furniture, cardboard boxes, dusty mirrors, everything showed signs of long disuse. Hannah's eyes fixed on a large trunk placed in the corner of the room. Nervously approaching, she placed her hand on the trunk's lid. Taking a deep breath, she slowly opened it. Inside were old clothes and photo albums. However, what caught Hannah's attention was a familiar stuffed animal placed on top. Katie's favorite teddy bear. Hannah gasped. This teddy bear should have disappeared along with Katie when she went missing. Why was it here? Searching further in the trunk, she found Katie's diary and clothes that should have been recently purchased. Questions swirled in Hannah's mind. Were all these items placed here after Katie's disappearance? Suddenly, Ethan's voice called from below. "Mom! Are you okay?" Hannah came to her senses and quickly closed the trunk. "I'm fine, I'm coming down now." As she left the attic, Hannah's heart was full of confusion and anxiety. Was Katie in this house? If so, why wouldn't she show herself? And what did mother-in-law Rebecca know? When she descended the ladder, an anxious-faced Ethan was waiting. Hannah embraced her son and said, "There was nothing there. It must have been your imagination." However, Hannah herself knew best that these words were a lie. Various thoughts raced through Hannah's mind about what she should do next. Should she contact Drake? Should she consult the police? Or, should she first talk with mother-in-law Rebecca? Hannah let out a deep sigh as she led Ethan back to his room. "It's late. Let's go to bed." Lying in bed, Hannah stared at the ceiling. The secret of the attic weighed heavily upon her. What action should she take tomorrow? Hannah spent the long night lost in thought. In the kitchen where morning sunlight streamed in, Hannah had strengthened her resolve after a sleepless night of contemplation. Sipping coffee, she recalled the events in the attic last night. Finding Katie's belongings, and mother-in-law Rebecca's strange warning. These couldn't be mere coincidences. Hannah picked up her cell phone and held down Drake's name. However, she canceled the call just before it started ringing. There wasn't solid evidence yet. She might just worry Drake needlessly. Hannah let out a deep sigh. "Mom, good morning." Ethan's voice brought Hannah back to reality. "Good morning, Ethan. Did you sleep well?" Ethan shook his head. "Well, not really." Hannah sat next to her son and gently put her arm around his shoulders. "Ethan, Mom wants to investigate something about Katie. Will you help me?" Ethan's eyes lit up. "Yes." Hannah told Ethan about what she had found in the attic last night. Then she explained her plan to ask around town today. But keep it a secret. Don't tell Grandma or Dad, Hannah said with a serious expression. Ethan nodded with a mature look. I understand, Mom. I'll help you properly. After finishing breakfast, Hannah and Ethan headed into town. Their first stop was the house of Katie's best friend Lana. Her mother came to the door. About Katie? Yes, I've been so worried about her. But recently, she trailed off. Recently? Hannah prompted. Well, it's probably just my imagination, but last week, I thought I saw someone who looked like Katie late at night. Hannah's heart raced. Where did you see her? At the corner of Willow Street. But she disappeared quickly. Next, they visited Katie's violin teacher's house. The teacher shook her head sadly. I'm sorry, but I have no information about Katie. I miss hearing her play, though. As they went around town, Hannah heard strange rumors. There were multiple accounts of seeing an unknown girl at night. However, no one could definitively say it was Katie. In the afternoon, Hannah and Ethan visited the library. Ethan eagerly began researching local history books. Hannah was flipping through old local newspaper articles. Suddenly, Ethan called out in a small voice. Mom, look at this. The photo he pointed to showed a young Rebecca. However, the name was different. Michelle White. Hannah read aloud involuntarily. That's not Grandma's name, is it? Ethan asked curiously. Hannah tilted her head. Rebecca should have been married to Drake's father by the time this photo was taken. Why was there a different name? As they were leaving the library, Hannah was stopped by Monica, the librarian. Hannah, were you researching Rebecca? Monica's voice was low, as if watching out for others. Yes, I was curious about something. Hannah tried to appear calm. Monica continued hesitantly. There have been various rumors about her for years. Especially about her life before coming to this town. Just then, the library door opened as another patron entered. Monica abruptly cut off her conversation, saying, "We'll talk later," before walking away. When they returned home, Hannah found Rebecca standing at the front door. Her expression was more severe than usual, as if she had something to say. "Mother-in-law, what brings you here?" Hannah asked, trying to maintain her composure. "Hannah, we need to talk," Rebecca's voice was cold. Once they entered the living room, Rebecca suddenly changed the subject. "Have you been up to the attic recently?" Hannah hesitated for a moment. "No, I haven't gone up there, just as you said." Rebecca stared intently into Hannah's eyes. "Good. I'm glad." Then she stood up, saying, "I'm going to get something I forgot," and headed toward the attic ladder. As Hannah watched Rebecca's back disappear up the ladder, she felt her heart rate increase. What was Rebecca hiding? And where was Katie? These questions grew larger and larger in Hannah's mind. Late that night, after the family had gone to bed, Hannah quietly made her way to the attic. She was concerned about Rebecca's visit earlier and wanted to check for any new clues. Climbing the ladder carefully with her flashlight in hand, she ascended into the dusty space. Upon entering the attic, the musty air tickled her nose. Hannah looked around and noticed the old trunk Rebecca had approached earlier. Slowly opening the lid, she found an aged photo album inside. Hannah gasped. The album cover read, "Michelle White's Memories." It was the same name she'd seen at the library. With trembling hands, she turned the pages, revealing photo after photo of a young Rebecca. However, beside her was an unfamiliar man. Could this be Rebecca's ex-husband? Hannah whispered to herself. Turning more pages, she discovered a letter tucked inside. Written in young Rebecca's, or rather, Michelle's, handwriting on yellowed paper. Dear Tom. We may never meet again. But this is the only way I can escape your violence. I'm starting a new life. Please don't try to find me. Goodbye, Michelle. Hannah finished reading the letter, overwhelmed by complex emotions. The truth about Rebecca's past was gradually coming to light. The next morning, Hannah saw Ethan off to school. However, that afternoon, she received a call from the school. Mrs. Brown, I'm sorry, but Ethan seems to be absent from his afternoon classes. Hannah exclaimed in surprise. What? But this morning. Rushing into town in panic, Hannah searched everywhere for Ethan. Finally, she spotted him in front of an old movie theater. However, there was another person with him, an unknown man. Hannah hid behind a corner, trying to hear their conversation. About your sister. Yes, I think I saw someone who looked like her, the man's voice carried over. Ethan's voice followed. Really? Where did you see her? Hannah held her breath. Ethan had begun his own investigation. While worried, she couldn't help but admire her son's courage. That night, Hannah began researching Rebecca's hometown on her computer. When she searched the small town's name, she found a newspaper article from 30 years ago. Local businessman arrested for domestic violence, the headline read. Hannah's eyes widened. Reading further, she saw the victim's name was Michelle White. And the perpetrator was Thomas White, the man from the album. With trembling hands, Hannah picked up her phone and called Monica at the library. Monica, I need to know about Rebecca. I mean, Michelle White. On the other end of the line, Monica sighed. So you found out? Yes, Rebecca was really named Michelle White. Monica continued, 30 years ago, she came to this town to escape her abusive husband. She changed her name and started a new life. Hannah was speechless. Rebecca's past suffering and her courage to start anew, everything was starting to make sense. But why would she take Katie? Hannah began, but Monica interrupted. That I don't know. But Rebecca must have her reasons. After hanging up, Hannah stared out the window. In the darkness of night, she could see the small window of the attic. Was Katie up there? And what was Rebecca trying to protect? Suddenly, the doorbell rang. Hannah looked at the clock. It was past 10 p.m. Who could it be? Nervously opening the door, she found Rebecca standing there. Her expression was more serious than Hannah had ever seen before. Hannah, we need to talk, Rebecca's voice trembled. It's time I told you everything. Hannah nodded silently and invited Rebecca into the living room. It was going to be a long night. the moment of truth had finally arrived. Hannah glanced at the clock, feeling anxiety spread through her chest. It was past 3 p.m., and Ethan still hadn't returned home. He usually came back by 2:30. She had sent multiple messages to his cell phone, but there was no response. He must have stopped at a friend's house, she told herself while looking out the window. But there was no sign of Ethan on the street. By 3:30, Hannah couldn't wait any longer and left the house. She first went to the home of Mike, Ethan's best friend. Mike's mother apologetically shook her head. "I'm sorry, Hannah. Ethan hasn't been here." Next, she called the school. "Ethan left after his last class ended," was the response, which only increased Hannah's anxiety. She ran around town, calling Ethan's name. The park, the library, his favorite ice cream shop. Her son was nowhere to be found. As the sun began to set, Hannah debated whether to call the police. However, thinking of Rebecca's secret and Katie's situation made her hesitate. "Hannah!" Suddenly, a voice called from behind. Turning around, she saw Rebecca standing there. "Mother-in-law. Ethan is." Hannah explained the situation, tears welling in her eyes. Rebecca's expression darkened. "Let's go back home. There's something I need to tell you." Back at the house, Rebecca sat on the living room sofa. Her posture suggested she carried a heavy burden of many years. "Hannah, Rebecca faltered, searching for words. "My real name is Michelle White." Hannah caught her breath. "I know. But why?" Rebecca, or rather, Michelle, let out a deep sigh. 30 years ago, I fled from my abusive husband. I changed my name and started a new life. Then I met Drake's father." Tears glistened in her eyes. "But the past doesn't disappear so easily. My ex-husband kept searching for me." Hannah asked in a trembling voice, "What does this have to do with Katie and Ethan?" Michelle raised her face and looked straight into Hannah's eyes. "Katie, she discovered my secret. She found threatening letters from my ex-husband." Hannah gasped. "So, Katie." Hannah jumped from her chair the moment Rebecca finished her confession. "Where's Katie?" Her voice trembled. Rebecca let out a deep sigh. "At my house. Let's go." The two rushed to Rebecca's house. Hannah's hands shook as she drove, her knuckles white from gripping the steering wheel too tightly. Rebecca sat silently in the passenger seat, occasionally glancing at Hannah. Upon arriving at Rebecca's house, Hannah quickly jumped out of the car. "Hurry! Where's Katie?" Rebecca slowly entered the house and stopped in front of a large bookshelf in the living room. "Hannah, are you ready?" Hannah could barely contain her impatience, crying out, "What are you talking about? Let me see my daughter." Rebecca quietly placed her hand on one of the books and pulled. To Hannah's surprise, the entire bookshelf moved, revealing a hidden door. Hannah caught her breath. Such a mechanism! Rebecca placed her hand on the door and slowly opened it. "Katie, it's all right. Mom's here." As the door opened, a small, dimly lit room appeared. There was a thin figure of a